Good morning, class. My name is Kacee Love, and this morning I'll be analyzing the effects of alcohol on the nervous system. I will begin with an overview of the nervous system. Then I will give an overview of alcohol and its effects on the brain and the body. And finally, I'll analyze the effects of alcohol on consciousness before comparing the effects of alcohol with other methods creating similar effects. The neuron is a cell that receives and transmits information within the body. These cells talk to each other through a series of electrical and chemical reactions. A neuron, in its resting state, is negatively charged. But over time, positively charged ions seep through the cell membranes and depolarize the cell, making it less negative. If a neuron is depolarized enough, it will reach a threshold and fire or send information down the chain. This act of meeting the threshold is called a neuron's action potential. Neurons act in accordance with the all or none law, which states neurons will either fire or it will not based on electrical impulses, either reaching or failing to reach a specific threshold. Signals are received by dendrites within the cell, these branch-like arms of the neuron, and then information is passed along the cell down the axon, the tail-like structure that's protected by myelin sheaths. This sheath allows information to travel more quickly than it would otherwise be able to. At the end of the axon are more branches with swollen ends. These swollen ends are known as terminal buttons. The information traveling along the cell is transitioned from electrical impulses to chemicals. These chemicals are transported in vesicles. The vesicles then release neurotransmitters which travel across the fluid-filled synapse between cells. They are received by the next cell in the line via receptor sites, and then the process starts all over again. This process is called neurotransmission. A key point is that after firing an action potential, the neuron rests in its refractory period, where it's unable to fire again for a short amount of time. When talking about regions of the brain, I'd like to start with the hindbrain. It's the oldest portion of the brain and is located on top of the spinal cord. The hindbrain controls the majority of basic functions required for survival. The cerebellum controls and processes perception and motor skills. The cerebellum modifies motor movement as opposed to just producing it. The brainstem is a conduit for incoming sensory information and outgoing motor control. The brainstem also integrates functions required for cardiovascular systems, respiratory control, pain sensitivity, alertness, and consciousness. The pons relays messages between the cortex and the cerebellum. The pons also plays a vital role in arousal, sleep, and dreaming. The medulla controls many life-sustaining responses like breathing and heartbeat, as well as reflexes like vomiting, coughing, and swallowing. The next region of the brain that I'd like to discuss is the limbic system. It's part of the forebrain, the part of the brain that distinguishes human thought from animal thought. The basal ganglia is an essential participant in motor control, cognition, different forms of learning, and emotional processing. The amygdala detects danger and plays a role in aggression and reward. The thalamus is a translator. It receives sensory information from the sense organs and processes that information into a usable format for the cerebral cortex. The hypothalamus links the nervous system to the endocrine system. It regulates body temperature, hunger, thirst, sex drive, fatigue, anger, and circadian cycles. And the hippocampus is responsible for creating and consolidating information and then making new memories. The last region of the brain that I'd like to discuss is the cerebral cortex. Evolutionarily, it is the newest part of the brain. The cerebral cortex is divided into two hemispheres, and each hemisphere is divided into four lobes. The frontal lobes are located behind your forehead. They perform integration and management functions within the brain. The parietal lobes are located in front of the occipital lobes and play a vital role in processing and integrating sensory information related to taste, temperature, and touch. The occipital lobes are located in the rearmost portion of the brain, and it's responsible for visual processing. And finally, the temporal lobes are located in front of the occipital lobes, above the ears, and responsible for auditory processing. Consciousness is the awareness of our internal and external environment. Consciousness can be broken down into two different categories. Waking consciousness, where a person is alert and aware of their surroundings, and altered states of consciousness, which is a different level of arousal from the normal waking state. This could range from a decreased level of consciousness from activities like sleeping or alcohol use to an increased state of consciousness because of exercise or stimulant use. In the realm of chemistry, the term alcohol encompasses a broader category of organic compounds characterized by the presence of a hydroxyl group composed of an oxygen and hydrogen atom bonded to carbon atoms. However, in everyday language, and here in this discussion today, when we use the term alcohol, we're typically talking about a specific chemical, ethanol. Ethanol is one of the oldest and most widely used drugs. Ethanol enhances the effects of GABA, GABA being a primary inhibitor neurotransmitter within the brain. There's a large body of evidence showing that GABA receptors play central roles for both short and long-term effects of ethanol within the central nervous system. GABA causes an increased inhibitory or calming effect. Side effects also include drowsiness and a decline in motor coordination. Alcohol factors into quite a bit of the places within the brain. The frontal lobes, where cognition, thought, and memory take place. The hippocampus, which is another memory storage, memory creation tool within the brain. The cerebellum, for movement and balance. The hypothalamus, which kind of controls sex drive. The medulla, where an increase in alcohol can create slowed breathing or slowed heart rate. Alcohol also can cause those calming and sedative effects of the nervous system. All right, those increases in drowsiness and decline in motor coordination. If you were to try to replicate those effects on the body, you could split those into two different categories. I guess the positive side, the feeling of euphoria you get from drinking, could be replicated using things like exercise, whereas the negative sides of things, meaning the drowsiness and decline in motor coordination, could actually be replicated using sleep deprivation, for example. This concludes my talk on the effects of alcohol on the nervous system. Thank you for your time.